Welcome to the Murphy, Sam, and Jodi After the Show podcast, and we're going to pump you up here, give you a little boost. In the show, Jodi was talking about assertiveness, and it doesn't necessarily come naturally to a lot of people. Actually, I don't know that everyone really. Assertiveness is something that you really learn how to do through life and interaction, with others. And I guess for some people it pops right in, but for others, not so much. But I thought it was really good, sound advice.
Well, I think that assertiveness is a tricky little tightrope that some people walk, because some people are assertive and it comes off as rough, and some people are afraid of being assertive. I think on both sides of assertiveness, there's something at play that's not spoken.
Yeah.
How many times have you had to speak to someone in the office about something that you have to bring it up and you feel like you need to be assertive, but maybe you're not good at it. Maybe you're not practiced at it. Maybe you are stepping on in a delicate area.
Yeah.
And I do think that conversation we had in the show speaks to me, because I don't think I was ever taught to be assertive when I was a little girl growing up. I certainly became assertive because life.
Yeah.
But I do think that I was raised in a way where I think boys were certainly taught to be assertive, but I don't know that it was ever seen in a positive light to be assertive. Does that make sense?
Well, it depends on how you define assertive. I think that's what it is, because I think we said this in the show. Some people define assertiveness with confrontation and a negative thing, and the truth is, assertiveness done correctly is not. There's nothing that's negative about being assertive. In fact,
confident.
That's how you actually do, set your boundaries and
Yes.
move forward in life and all of those kinds of things. Yeah. It's how you go about things that make
right.
you,
context
assertive.
is everything. Like,
so
say something with certainty,
right.
but you can say it kindly, but with certainty.
So when you say boys were assertive, but you weren't, how were you viewing that you weren't assertive? In what ways?
I don't feel like I stood up for myself when I was a little girl very much. And I don't think that the role models around me really stood up for themselves the way that they wanted to. Does that make sense? The female role models.
You weren't told to pipe down.
Oh, no.
Oh,
I was never told to pipe down. Absolutely not. But just...
So what do you mean, like old school, it's a woman's place kind of thing?
No, I mean, I just don't think it was ever spoken about. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I don't think it was ever spoken about that it was like that I was expected to be agreeable.
Yeah.
I could feel that. It's better to be agreeable.
Yeah.
Even if you need to stand up for yourself or say something for yourself. And I remember times as my dad was, my world when I was a little girl, and he started to notice this in me. He didn't like it, and he would work on it. When I was a little girl, it was never spoken about. But as I got older and I was like in junior high and I started having maybe, problems with my peers, I started having bullying issues. I was being bullied. That's when he started talking to me about being assertive.
Yeah. That's that time period that's a whole other league.
It is.
I mean, that is a whole other, because there's a lot of change, and bullying is really like, next level. And that's sort of the extreme thing. I think, in just general, in life in general, my mom was confrontational.
Yes.
She was assertive, but she was quite confrontational. And,
yes.
But what's really interesting about that, I don't know how much of that I modeled, from her or not. I'm sure I modeled some of it, because, again, assertiveness is also not confidence. It's not the same. Assertiveness is an action. Assertiveness is how you actually proceed in a situation, and it doesn't mean you're built in as like, all right, I've got this conquered. It's how you proceed, and assertiveness is about how you feel in setting boundaries, but you have to understand the other person. Uh-huh. Assertiveness is done with empathy. If all you're doing is thinking about you and you're defending yourself, you're going to come off defensive.
Okay.
Assertiveness and getting what you need is a collaborative thing. You need, and not all situations, right? Like a bully, you're not going to collaborate with a bully. I get that.
Yeah.
But you know, if all you're thinking about is you, and you become so inward on it, you're going to miss the point, and you're not going to be assertive. Because moving something forward and protecting yourself is about having the other understand why the other person is doing what they're doing, or understand how they're going to receive what you're about to say. Does that make sense?
Yes.
It's not really being a mind reader per se, but it's almost like, I don't want to say negotiation, but it's a two-part thing. Because like my mom, for example, I'll just use that, and I love my mom and always will. She was difficult to get into discussions with, because if you disagreed with her, she became angry.
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
And so, you know, I had to learn what her triggers were. And if I was going to be assertive and stand up for something that I thought was important, and you do, it's not like I was defying my parents. If I was standing up and setting boundaries for something, then, you know, I had to understand what didn't trigger her.
What's
Now, sometimes
interesting
that
about
was
you and
tricky.
your mom, man, when your mom had you, she, I hate to say, but met her match, because you are a very confidently assertive person, Murphy. And I'm sure when you were younger, you didn't have it in control as you do now.
No,
so
I
when
didn't,
you
and
used
that-
to butt
yeah.
heads, I would have never wanted to be there. I know you've told me these stories about you and your mom, Merle, butting
Yeah.
heads. And man, that is the last place I think I would have wanted to be.
That's definitely another podcast altogether.
I know. I know.
But yeah,
It's in the past,
but it
though.
wasn't done well. But you learn from, you know, all of those things as you go.
Sure.
The one thing that I remember, and it's difficult really for me to talk about, because I don't want to say anything about my dad negatively, because he also, like any parent, iconic, and all of the great things that I have learned to do and not to do, actually, you know, they came from him.
Uh-huh.
But there was a situation where my brother and a friend of his up the street got into some sort of a fight with each other, and it was, I think, a kind of a bullying situation. And my dad went up to talk to the other dad, who was military, and as they got, you know, into the discussion with each other, the other guy was just losing his temper, and my dad really didn't. I mean, it just turned into a yes sir, yes sir, yes sir, and then walked away. And I remember thinking, I was probably 9 or 10 years old. I was surprised at that, because my
Sure.
dad was, you know, our defender, and I thought he would be
Yeah.
defending my brother. And even at that moment, I realized that's not who I'm going to be. You know, I mean, it's like I'm not going to be talked to like that. And I'm not going to put myself in danger either, because sometimes you're going to talk to somebody who's irrational, and that's another thing you've got to learn.
You have to learn to gauge.
You cannot reason with people who are, you know, being completely irrational. So there's no sense in trying to stay in that kind of a discussion. So
Right.
that's not what I'm talking about. But to me, two reasonable adults is like, give the man a chance to cool off, and then say, I understand, and then, you know, and then move it forward. But my dad would tell me later in life, he was always really a rule follower. He was not a confrontational person. He
wasn't.
did not like it at all. And so I think he stepped away from that. But when I tell you that was a moment for me.
I didn't know that story.
Well, I've never really told it, because it's one that when you tell it, it sounds like because I wasn't
Sure.
disappointed in my dad. I was just surprised.
You just had a moment for yourself.
Because I was expecting, you know, something different.
Right.
And that was one of the moments for me where I realized, well, no one's going to ever talk to me like that.
Did he ever
You know?
come to you like right after that and say, the reason I walked away was because?
No, my dad wasn't, you know, and he wasn't going to apologize for it. It went away.
Mm-hmm.
My dad at that time in his life was not really conversational with us in that way. I don't know how much he was drinking at that time. It just wasn't in his nature. Look, I mean, I'm talking about when you roll the clock back on that, you're talking about my dad being 32, 33 years old. At 32 and 33, we're still learning. We're still, you know, bruising our nose on things and, you know, kind of learning our way. And I saw him, you know, later in life not be like that. But I also don't know that, you know, if you go back, Jodi, like you're talking about family members and the family environment, that he grew up with the World War II generation, which was, you just do what I say.
Right.
And I'm not going to
Don't
give you
even
an
ask.
explanation. And that's obviously not a healthy thing too. So, you know, you got to give my dad some, you know, grace for that. But anyway, the reason I bring that up is I'm sure that's a common experience for a lot of people. When you get into a situation, especially if you haven't experienced that before, where there's a hothead that you're dealing with and you're really caught off guard, with that. It's like you're trying to figure out your way. Okay, at what point do I either just continue this conversation or exit it, or how do I properly, handle it? In this case, because I don't remember if my brother had been punched by this kid or whatever it was, but my dad was in the right to go up there and have the conversation with him, and a reasonable person would have understood that and said, yes, you're right, our kids don't need to be fighting, each other. But anyway, I think that when we go back, you're talking about assertiveness there. Not everybody's going to have that same, feel to be able to stand up to somebody, especially when you feel intimidated, even if you don't need to feel intimidated.
I feel like what we're talking about is defined differently by every single person. We were having trouble in the beginning of this podcast explaining what assertiveness is. And that's because it means something different to you than it does to me, than it does to you, Sam. And I believe that's true. I looked it up while we started.
Definition.
So adjective, having or showing a confident or forceful personality. And then the question goes on, is assertiveness positive? Yes, assertiveness is generally considered a positive trait, representing a healthy balance between being passive and being aggressive. It involves clearly and respectfully expressing your needs, opinions, and boundaries while also considering others.
Which is exactly what I was saying at the beginning.
Correct.
It's the two-way. You're always having to consider others.
I think some people, I think you have to probably work on your assertiveness, because if you are a naturally sort of gruff person, your assertiveness will come off rough.
Yeah.
Sometimes some people have it in balance and have it right and can be assertive in a way that is positive for the situation, but confident.
Well, that's why you hear it, a calm assertiveness. It wasn't it? Who was the pet?
The dog whisperer, Cesar Millan.
Cesar Millan used to say a calm assertiveness with pets.
A calm assertive energy, which is, I will say, which is also what a lot of women love in men.
Okay.
A calm, assertive energy.
Well, so in calm assertiveness, it works in every situation, not just with pets.
Yeah.
And so what you were talking about, it being emotionally charged, that changes the dynamic.
Yeah.
You're not really, yes, in a technical sense, you're being assertive, but you're changing the dynamic once you become emotionally charged, because every action has an opposite and equal reaction.
Yes.
It's so funny how that law of physics is so true in conversation. You throw that out there. If you want to put somebody on the defense real quick, go out and hurl some sort of emotional reaction.
Yeah.
And they're either going to, close up, but whatever it is, it's going to be a defensive reaction, which is not what you want when you're trying to be assertive. You mentioned on the show about like bringing a solution. Mm-hmm. That's part of what, it is. If you give an example or you bring a solution, that helps somebody. You're not, again, putting somebody on the defensive, because that's really where most arguments begin to deteriorate is, it becomes a butting of the heads.
Right.
One becomes more forceful. The reactor becomes even more forceful. And then the next thing you know, it's a downward spiral. It's the human condition.
It's crazy. Yeah. It's crazy.
I have a question for you, Jodi.
Yes, Sam.
And I know this is kind of stereotyping, but do you feel that women have it tougher trying to be assertive?
I think that women are perceived differently being assertive.
Perceived, yes.
When I'm assertive, it feels different to you than when a man is assertive to you. You almost respect it more. But this is my opinion, I feel like if Murphy is assertive with you, you respect it.
Yeah.
Especially if it's handled respectfully. But if I'm assertive with you, it doesn't feel the same to you. You may not like it as much. That is a universal thing. It is getting better in our time, but it's just the way that it is.
Yeah.
For some reason, the female energy is, people expect it to be lighter. They expect it to be more pleasing to you.
And I know you've heard, like female bosses who are assertive and great leaders, sometimes they are labeled.
Yes.
You know the word.
Yeah, I do know the word. Right.
Wrongly they're labeled that.
Mm-hmm.
They're just being assertive.
She's a blank on wheels. And if he was
but
doing it, he would be this awesome leader.
But I think that, again, I think what separates those, you can forget the gender part of it. I mean, you're right. Maybe some of it is.
Some.
I think in the world today, we need to, again, remember, we're the human biology organic components. We are not perfect machines.
Right.
And, so we're emotion-based. And what I was just saying a minute ago about emotion is what lends itself to creating the confrontation. Because generally speaking, women are more emotional, but although I'm a pretty emotional guy, but
You actually both are emotional.
But what I was going to say is because once you communicate something with emotion because you're passionate about it,
right.
I think that's the thing that gets misinterpreted. But I think it's the responsibility of the listener to know and understand you well enough. And especially if it's the leader, the leader. You always respect the role, even if you have a challenge with the person. And so we've all worked with difficult bosses, on and off over the years. I don't mean us personally. I'm saying in general, people, sometimes you have a boss that's not going to be, the greatest in the world, or a personality match, I guess.
Right.
But if you respect the role, then you're going to, have an easier time getting along. But see, by that nature, that's an emotional detachment also.
The issue, not the person.
Correct, exactly. You're focused, on the role. So I think that's where a lot of that comes from. You and I being married, Jodi, over the years, so we're both passionate people. And I know I used to misread some of the passion coming from you as a meanness or whatever when you were intense, but you're just feeling something passionately. And when you get to that point, that's just the way you communicate it. It's not an insult. I had to change my perception and not try to change you.
Yeah.
That makes sense?
How's that going?
I think it's going great. But
Well, I think it's a great conversation. This feels like group therapy Thursday, because I feel like assertiveness is misinterpreted a lot, and I do think people need to fight for it in a way. My goal for assertiveness, do you feel like I'm an assertive person?
Oh, definitely I do. Yeah, you.
Good.
Well, I mean, I think that's right. You
proud of that. Hopefully in a good way.
Well, of course.
A problem-solving way.
Yeah.
A way that makes things better for all of us.
Well, it's literally what you just said, and you've used that term pretty much since I've known you, is fight for it.
Oh, yeah.
If it's something you believe in, if it's like something we want to talk about on the show, and it's like, I don't know, and if you believe in it,
let's fight for it. Right.
Yeah, exactly. I think assertiveness turns itself into confidence. And if you're going to embark on a career or anything where you really want to grow, assertiveness, not necessarily to others, your own internal assertiveness is the difference.
Yes.
If you can't push your comfort zone, you're always going to stay where you are.
Agreed.
It's just, and again, that's not a judgment on anybody. It's human nature. If you don't do something because it makes you nervous and you're afraid to and anxiety prone on it, I don't mean heights. I don't mean phobias. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about, just in general in life, then you're not going to take that next assertive step with yourself, to move it forward.
Yeah.
And so it's just a matter of trying it. I think what most people will find is if you respect others and, you consider both sides as you assert and you grow in whatever it is you're doing in your life and in your career, the momentum will start to build. Once you start to see, okay, all it takes is a step forward to move something forward, but never taking the step,
guarantees you're never moving forward.
Absolutely, right, exactly.
Assertiveness training today. We loved it, guys.
Missed any part of the show? Get it all on the Murphy, Sam, and Jodi podcast.